Hello viewers, how are you today? I hope you're fine. Welcome back with me, Nadia Happy, in your voice segment. And now I'm here sitting with a culture observer from Bali, the famous strangers in paradise, or we call Mr. Made Wijaya. Hello sir, how are you?
Fine, thank you, Miss Happy.
Thank you very much. Well, sir, as we know that there was held a ceremony of Baligia, Karya Agung Baligia in Puri Pemecutan. Did you attend the ceremony, sir?
I've lived with a cousin of the Prince of Pemecutan, the Pemecutan family being the most popular in Denpasar in South Bali. He's our big love, the Prince of Pemecutan. All of South Bali adores him because he's a people's prince. He's always at all of the ceremonies. So I've lived with a distant relative in the village of Kapaun. And my liege lord, because in Bali you must have, even as a foreigner, if you adopt a Balinese family, you have a liege lord, meaning a prince or a Brahmin priest who is your liege elder. So I adopted the Prince of Kapaun. And when he passed away last year, in his will he asked to have his soul purification ceremony, which is part of the cremation process, with his relative in the main palace in Denpasar. Rather complicated, the Balinese culture. So that's how I got in, on the ticket of the Prince of Kapaun. And I do know the Chakorta Pemecutan Uramanik Parasara because he's always at all of the Kapaun ceremonies. He makes a point of going to even the smaller little mini palaces around. There must be 100 of them, as far as Tampat Siring to Seminyak, to right down to Nusa Dua. It's part of his realm. So I know him because he's always there. Even for someone's driver, he'll turn up. He's very popular.
So can you explain what exactly Karya Agung Baligia ceremony exactly?
Well, for the Balinese, the number one job for a Balinese is being Balinese. Everything else just overtime girl. So this time, it was the soul purification ritual for the Chakorta's mother, the prince's mother, from the Grencheng Palace just up the road. And it involves a purification ritual, the end of which the soul of the departed is returned to the palace royal chapel, where it will sit forever as a village deity. So the deified souls, spirits of the royal families in Bali often become village gods, and this is one of the reasons why the royal families survive in Bali.
Okay, Mr. Made Wijaya, now we are going to watch the presentation of the pictures of Baligia ceremony. Can you explain what are these photos exactly?
Well, the photos I took from my column, The Stranger in Paradise, which is available in book form at bookstores across the island, The Best of the Stranger. It started in the Bali Post in 1979 and it's still going. I was invited by the prince to take these photos. The first series is, which was actually taken by my driver, is of the Nganget Bringin, because to make the soul effigy, the spirit effigy, you have to use the banyan tree leaves. So the first ceremony you'll see in this following presentation is of the Nganget Bringin at the big banyan tree on the crossroads in Denpasar. Then there's the procession to Kuta Beach and the dances that happened in the palace around all of those ceremonies. So the whole idea is the forming of these very beautiful padmas and puspalinga. The name changes with every purification. So you'll see some captions. There's a very moving moment in the middle where you'll see the king of Mengwi actually bowing to the padma of his rival princess's mother. It's a lot of information. But it's amazing that the actual king of Mengwi would pay homage like this to the king of Pemecutan's mother up in the high pavilion of the priests, where I was lucky enough to be shooting.
So what is the importance of Pitrayatnya, especially for Balinese people?
It's the most important thing. It's perhaps something, particularly the Baligia ceremony, inherited from the Chinese culture, because you don't have this in Hindu India. You do have the cremation, which is quite similar to the Indian cremation. But the Baligia, the idea of the soul purification and then bringing it back into the family house temple, India don't have family house temples. You used to in Kerala. So Bali Bhakti Yoga one of the many forms of enlightenment, of the paths to enlightenment of Hindu, which is the celebration of life through ritual, worship through ritual, bhakti. The word Bali comes from wali, which means ceremonies, offerings. So one of the offering ways is the TVRI, which is to the ancestors. So you deify your ancestors, you make them gods. Bali is called Pulo Dewata. You put them in your family house temple, and then in the way the Chinese do on their altars, where there's now Mao Zedong, traditionally the Chinese had the altar of the ancestors. That survives today in Bali. In every house you have a little temple, a family house temple called a Sangha or Marajan. Very important to the Balinese. The most important thing is TVRI for the Balinese.
Sounds very interesting, sir. So, as a person who get a close relation to the family of Puri Pemecutan, King of Pemecutan, as I've seen in the picture, the family who attend the ceremony is less. I see that there was only the sister who attend. Where the others family exactly? Why they didn't attend the ceremony?
Well, there had been an incident a couple of years ago, a tragic incident. I'd rather not go into details. And the prince was forced into exile, which happens to kings, to his mother's house in Grencheng. This is the mother whose Baligia was celebrated in today's presentation. After his period in exile, he was absolved, not quite legally, but popularly, and allowed to come back to the main palace, and even voted again as the Chakorda, the head of that family. Now, it wasn't really accepted by all of his brothers and sisters, but the many vassal princes, small mini palaces, the Pemecutan palaces, and maybe there's 200 of them around South Bali, all voted for him. So they all turned up in today's presentation, but only his sister, not his brothers and his many half-brothers. His father had over 30 wives. His father survived the famous Pemecutan battle with the Dutch. And it was his cremation, when the whole of Denpasar was closed in 1980, when they first started wearing black at Balinese cremations, because black is the color for Krishna. And Krishna, Vishnu, the god of the mountains is the king. So Pemecutan's color is black. So in today's film you saw that only the king, the prince, the crown prince, his son Damar, and the grandson. And there was a particularly beautiful photograph on the beach of the son, Damar, sprinkling the holy water on his grandson, all of them wearing black. Everyone else wore white on white.
So, sir, as seen in the picture, there were no tourists who attend the ceremony. Why? Can you explain?
Well, I was surprised because in the old days there'd be hundreds of tourists, the Balinese themselves, and there were 120 pengiring, followers of the Raja's mother, people who had waited in graves over the South Bali to go with their king's mother at a giant Baligia ceremony, because you can't really afford all the offerings yourself. So in the old days, they would invite their friends, their drinking buddies, their mates from the hotels. Today, in that ceremony, there really was no one on the beach, a couple of joggers, one Banyuwangi Rasta, but amazingly, as I drove home from the cremation, there were thousands of Australians on the footpath, stubbies in hand, having their hair braided outside the Discovery Mall. So I fear that cultural tourism has become a bit of a culture of tourism when the most magnificent ceremony on the planet that morning is witnessed by no foreigner. It's a missed opportunity. So Bali, be in it.
Thank you very much, Mr. WIJAYA.
Thank you, Happy.
Okay, viewers, that's all our interview with the famous stranger in paradise, Mr. WIJAYA. I hope you enjoy. I'm Nadia Happy Report from TVRI. See you next time, and please enjoy my beautiful country.